Assalamualaikum and a very good evening, everyone. My name is Dayang Intan Syarikana Juminti Awang Bahar, and my teammate is Abdul Shakir, Azrina, and Nur Ain Fatiha. And we'll be talking about functional democracy and how democracy is about our power to determine our own fate and to be meaningful part of the decision that affects us. So I will start off with the functional democracy in the political standpoint, and Azrina will be explaining more on technology standpoint, Ain with economy standpoint, and Shakir with overall in public environment standpoint. As we all know that Malaysia is constitutional monarchy with parliamentary democracy that led by federal representative, the Yang di-Pertuan Agong. So Yang di-Pertuan Agong is the head of the state, while the Prime Minister of Malaysia is the head of the government in the federal representative democracy. So, functional democracy. What has gone wrong with democracy and the one person, one vote system? How can an election based on people's voice worsen the destructive factionalism? Democracy is defined as a government in which the people have supreme power and can exercise it directly or indirectly through representative. A system of fair and free election for selecting and replacing the government, people active engagement in politics and a civil life as citizen, protection of all citizens and human rights, and a rule of law system in which all citizens are treated equally under the law. So every vote has equal weight in a representative democracy. No unjustified limits may be imposed on anyone wishing to be like representative, and the freedom of its eligible individual is guaranteed by legitimate rights and liberties. So anyone can be representative with a good qualification, I might add. So, which are often safeguarded by the Constitution. This appears to be a misunderstanding that distinction between democracy as a system and democracy as a principle. Malaysia is a democratic system led by a constitutional monarchy, is capable of overcoming a political crisis nowadays. So, what is the political environment? Political structure is a term that refers to institutional or group and their relationship with one another, as well as the pattern of interaction within a political system. Political regulation, law, norms, and that are present in political system and form of political landscape of the political entity. So, for my slide, I will be talking about functional democracy in political. It's interesting to note that Malaysia legislation concerns are handled through a protection of bureaucracy agent system, in which Yang di-Pertuan Agong is the head of state and the Prime Minister of Malaysia is the head of government. Malaysia is a stable political entity. Well, I mean, in 2018 it might be. In developing and implementing its worldwide plan, it's good. It strives for norms and harmony and implementation, yeah. But regardless, it has a sea and several disagreements with certain provincial countries, political crisis. But these are the four elements of democracy governing system. So 1, a system of election and removing the government through free and fair election. When we talk about democracy, obviously we will be talking about election. There is literally no way we can leave out politics, as it is a system of government. And when we talk about functional democracy, we will be automatically demanded that choosing and replacing a government through free and fair election should be fair and yeah, free. Like when there's no one force you to vote for them, or you don't have the curiosity, is it right, or our secret as a voter is still legitimate. That is when we can deem ourselves as a very good functional democracy, as election that is free and fair. So a fair election is one in which all the voters have equal chance to register. For Malaysia, it's 21 years old, which I totally support, in which all ballots are counted and in which the result announced match an actual vote total without any drama, such as blackout. For example, May 5th, 2013, this event led to Malaysian post-general election rally in 2013, or Himpunan Blackout 2013, which many describe as that of democracy. So, what is it that makes people got a problem with Himpunan Blackout? It's actually that they are problematic in electoral, like example, phantom voter, multiple name in the ID, or that voter. It's really like not satisfying for people that they have the right, but ended up they are cheated, they feel cheated. So other than that, foreigner flown in the vote place 11 hours and escorted by the police. So it is very suspicious and unprofessional behavior, and it is very unexplained that there is new ballot box arrive in the government vehicle, and then when it's the time that they already counted and wanted to announce that who's the winner, the electricity blackout during the counting. It's very suspicious and not convincing, most of it. So second is active citizen engagement in political and civil life. As the start of 2020 to 2020, and the pandemic has struck the globe like lightning, where every nation have to focus on the pandemic. Social gathering and also political engagement was cut. This is where the challenge on engagement and caring for other citizens can be proven. I have to say that most of the politicians didn't even help anyone in Sabah. Mostly, they only came when it was PRN, which led to more pandemic, more people getting sick, getting the COVID-19, and it's very, very selfish that they wanted to win so badly that they go and know that PRN is our right, so we are going to go. And this is in the pandemic. It's really unnecessary and selfish for them to stop. So the second and the third is protection of all citizen human rights. Malaysian democracy has withstood a stubborn attempt by former government members. However, we must continue to challenge our elected official loyalty and allies to democracy. In other words, did our leader truly respect democracy? Defined as the power of the people. In March 1, 2020, Muhyiddin Yassin was elected as the 8th Prime Minister of Malaysia, leader Party of Malaysian United Indigenous Party, or Perikatan Nasional of Malaysia. oversaw the ousting of coalition government of Pakatan Harapan after ruling Malaysia for 22 months, following their unpredictable, unprecedented victory in the 2018 Malaysian general election. So, where were we in the process of determining who would be our new Prime Minister? Where were we in the terms of influencing our legislation decision? Where were we when we came to picking who would be our government? Our democracy right was being robbed from right under our nose, with allies changing back and forth like sad comedy of merry-go-round, and there was nothing we can do. It's a joke. That's all. Ashameable on the concept of democracy. I mean, they have to do what they have to do, but changing your allies is okay. Fourth, a rule of law in which citizens are treated equally under the law. In July of the same year of 2020, the ex Prime Minister, which is the sixth Prime Minister, Najib Razak, was sentenced to 12 years in jail after court found him guilty of various charges of corruption and abuse of authority in connection with the misleading of billions and billions of ringgit that state invested firm 1MDB, and was shocking in 2021 after a year that Malaysian PDRM or police failed to link the cash seized from the former Prime Minister Najib Razak resident to 1MDB on May 2021. So he was accused to have a corruption, to the misleading of billions of ringgit. Malaysia has declared a state of emergency to combat the coronavirus. But the sad thing is that the Najib Razak was accused and was pitifully so. Last and foremost, 4. A rule of law in which all citizens are treated equally under the law. In July of the same year, 2020, the 6th Prime Minister Najib Razak was sentenced to 12 years in jail after court found him guilty of various charges of corruption, abuse of authority in connection of the misleading of billions of ringgit from state investment firm 1MDB, and was recently found out that Malaysian police failed to link the cash seized from former Prime Minister Najib Razak resident to 1MDB on May 20, 2021. A year of that, of embarrassment, of people keep on saying that he is a corruption and making a joke out of it. And even Netflix. Okay. Indeed, this one every 5 years election have degraded into the mudslinging contest driven by favored and irrational participantship that accomplished little more than divided the country along nationalist feeling. Whereas today's election initiative is to tear down your opponent and exposing them all as monster, as corrupted, and spreading hate among one another. real democracy should be about this discourse in good faith and researching consensus for the general benefit for the citizen. Abraham Lincoln once said that democracy is for the people and to the people. Well, so there's a lot of political drama and crisis in Malaysia, which Malaysia has declared a state of emergency to combat the coronavirus epidemic. Also, the political crisis. After the king, Sultan Abdullah Ahmad Shah, granted the government's request on January 12, 2021, the king granted the emergency power to Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin government as a proactive effort to control the flattened daily COVID-19 cases that has crossed 4-figure constantly since December. True, Malaysia democracy system has survived thanks to the wisdom of Yang Di Tong Agong, but the question is whether those in authority upheld the democracy principle through the disaster. When Malaysians grieved the death of democracy in the nation, I believe they meant the democracy in the principle, not by the system. Now I will pass to Azrina to talk more about the technology standpoint of functional democracy.
After so many decades, our political system and people need has changed from time to time. Therefore, I would like to discuss functional democracy in the nature of technologies. Through the development and to move further into modern society, it is crucial for the society nowadays to have information communication technology, ICT knowledge, and the government need to exercise their responsibility by providing better access and experience to the society. So this is because the most drastic changes that can be seen in our country is that we are going through development in the adaptation towards technology and ICT, where we can see businesses and also government were moving into online registration, e-service and e-banking as their medium nowadays. In fact, people nowadays are not watching TV anymore to get the latest news. Instead of scrolling their social media such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram as their medium to access any current information. Perhaps the government, politician, media will also seem to be active in social media as their platform to engage with the society and addressing any issue and also information. Due to that reason, government came up with an act under Malaysian Communication and Multimedia Communication MCMC 1998 and Computer Crime Act 1997, which function to prevent any cyber criminal that is faced by user and to protect their online surfing. Despite this modern era in the 21st century, and since our country is moving into development in terms of nation and people, some big changes can be seen in our education system that is basically moving towards virtual system. So the significant changes of our way to communicate each other really seem to be obvious since the hit of pandemic COVID-19. So this is when the education process of learning and teaching were using online platform, which include virtual learning and teaching that involves student and educator to have access towards gadget and good coverage offline. So up to this point, it really causes chaos and conflict between student and parents who are facing a burden towards accommodating their child with proper gadgets such as laptop and also tablets. And in fact, some students have limited access towards their internet line coverage, which disrupt their learning process, which would be a bad impact towards their academic achievement. Therefore, the issue began when there was a minority society that was left behind consideration towards a new learning system in Malaysia. So this is due to the case that happened last year, 2020, where a Sabah student who are 18 years old was struggling in getting internet connection by staying up in the tree to prepare for her exam. So this case happened in Kota Kinabalu, Sabah, where the girl named known as Viviana Mosibin from University Sabah, Malaysia, was found viral in her YouTube channel, claimed being asleep in the langsat tree to get a better connection and internet coverage, as she need to attend online classes and to prepare for her upcoming exam. So this scenario really opened the eyes of many parties, including government, since this situation should not happen and it would be dangerous for a girl to commit such action. In order to respond towards the scenario, the case has been brought in the parliament where the Kudat Member of Parliament, Dato' Abdul Rahim Bakri, encountered that the girl was receiving access, as she stays in Pitas town where the internet is accessible, and she did that only to gain attention and also YouTube viewers. The Dean Faculty of University Sabah, Malaysia also confirmed that there were no exams were conducted. However, the controversy had affected many parties in Malaysia, including the Yang di-Pertuan Negeri, Tun Juha Mahiruddin, where he has urged and prompted the MCMC to preach and to improve the internet connection in the area by having a telecommunication tower built in the middle of 2020. In line with the same effort, Kudat Member of Parliament Dato' Abdul Rahim Bakri also drafted an initiative to list out the development needed in Pitas by outlining its infrastructure to further improve the internet access and coverage. Therefore, even though Viviana case was found as faulty, but due to her action, government has come with better planning and initiative that would be beneficial towards the community living in Pitas, where some development were expected to be brought. As an impact, the state government of Sabah came with an initiative to help underprivileged students to have better experience in participating the online learning by considering to provide electronic device to the student to facilitate their needs. This is to help underprivileged students that in needs to further their studies according to the new virtual system and to ease the burden of the parents by accommodating their children learning device to catch up with the new system nowadays. In November 2020, government has came up with a structured program to facilitate the needs of students around Malaysia in rural area by implementing a program known as Jalinan Digital Negara or Jendela, which will be accomplished by 2025 as the policy will be a part in the 12th Malaysia Plan from 2021 to 2025. So according to the MCMC chairman, the program will cover remote area and also rural area that will provide at least an internet access in the remote area while improving internet speed such as 4G coverage in the rural area as the cooperation between government, private and also public. So this is to ensure that students have internet access to participate in the learning process as the adaptation to further enhance the virtual learning experience due to the COVID-19 pandemic and movement control order. So through this program, government was seen as responsive towards any issue addressed by the public as the government were considering the needed group that live in remote and rural area to receive some advantages and to be a part in the policy making. Therefore, the conflict between the public has been addressed as the government took the initiative to solve the issue in the beginning route as to reform and facilitate the development in remote area and rural area in line with the vision of 2025, where to have successful development country in terms of education, economic and society.
So, I will proceed with the next point of how functional democracy works in terms of economy. For you guys' information, economics involved in functional democracy in line with associated of higher human capital accumulation, lower inflation and some other factors to ensure the effectiveness of the economy in the country. Moreover, democracy tied with economic sources of growth, even though there are several challenges in estimating the impact of democracy on growth. The foster growth of democracy can be hindered by reducing the rate of physical capital accumulation and less robustly by increasing government consumption to GDP. Okay, so for example, the education levels and lifespan through improvement of educative institutions as well as healthcare and also the domestic and international policies. Finally, even with year and country fixed effects, changes in democracy may be correlated with other changes or respond to current or future economic conditions. Besides that, government also follows the protracted resistance to the principle of market economy by having the communities that support the strengthening and promotes democracy as well as respecting human rights. Democracy and human rights were mobilized in implementing these strategies with the goal of achieving economic growth. Not to forget the fundamental freedom, which all of this can be the change or supporters of protecting the democracy and human right implies. We all know that democracy is based on the freely expressed will of the people to determine their own political, economic, social and also cultural system and their full participation in all aspects of their life. Thus, it will indirectly contribute to the development of economy in a country. Other than that, democracy allows to improve the development of economies by focusing on several conditions such as fiscal, economic and social condition in the country in order to enhance the economic status for lifting poor countries out of poverty. As we can see in international economic growth, therefore, by focusing on the market conditions, it can help to improve the conditions in the world's poorest countries. Both macroeconomics and microeconomics factors relating to the structure of the developing economics and domestic as well as international economic growth, followed by shaping both of the economics policies in order to lift poor countries out of poverty. Besides of the social and political backgrounds, cultural and economic frameworks also involved in transforming the nation into a better one, despite of different methods or ways of handling the situation such as human rights and child labour laws. The included aspects of development economics is ensuring to what extent rapid population growth helps or hinders development, the structural transformation of economics, and the roles of education and healthcare in development. However, in some cases, democracy allows democratic politics that lead to demands for welfare spending, which then blocks social saving and accumulation of capital instead of focusing on how to run the country more functional ways. It later will bring to another problem such as conflict and war and the falls of the economy itself, since developing countries cannot simultaneously pursue democracy and a larger national income. Authoritarian serves them better in early stage of development. Political parties organize politics in every modern democracy, and some observers claim that parties are what induce democracies to be responsive. However, consumers and producers in most of developing countries, investors does not feel that democratic institutions are the strongest safeguards since they will not function properly. Democracy institutions only carrying a name without actually performing or delivering the roles of their responsibility full-heartedly. This is because people do not have the capability to use their democratic rights in proper manners in developing countries. Perhaps the most enduring of their charges is that most people are incapable of participating in government in a meaningful or competent way because they lack the necessary knowledge, intelligence, wisdom, experience or character. Okay, so pandemic COVID-19 has conveys an example of how functional democracy works in handling the situation in line with preventing countries' economy from declining due to the disease. The virus has been spreaded all over the world and in the blink of an eye leads to an economic instability due to the amount of spending in driving the cases. Government need to spend more on the healthcare to ensure the basis of aid kits is complete and enough for the frontliners to treat those patients in need. By take a look on Malaysia's government, they are not only focusing on the healthcare division, the government also pay an attention towards the citizens' welfare by providing the necessary relief called as Bantuan PKP, since they have been prohibited to go out for work and most of the industries such as factories, malls need to be closed in order to prevent the disease from getting worse. Besides, our government helped them by providing a moratorium for those who needed and reacting to people's complaint by approving the citizens to withdraw their Employees Provident Fund (EPF) by creating the iLestari as well as iSina for people to survive during their hard time in this pandemic situation. I guess that's all from me. I will pass to Shakir to continue our presentation.
Alright, thank you. Now, I'm going to explain my part in functional democracy overall in public environment standpoint. Democracy is more than just a political system. It's a way for people to live together in a community. All for one and one for all. Within the context of functional democracy, these concepts are deemed to be acting competently when the people meet the demand, challenge, and opportunity that are presented by democratic and intercultural environment. That can be the example for Malaysian multi-ethnic culture and religion. This environment can be done appropriately in competencies by following the competencies. The competencies fall into two broad categories, which are attitude and knowledge, also critical understanding. Both of these broad categories are also related back to our legal and also social standpoint. Alright, on the first one, attitude. And attitude is the overall mental orientation which the people of Malaysia adopt toward each other. And three of these attitudes are important for a culture in functional democracy, which are openness to cultural otherness and to other belief, worldview and practice, respect and also responsibility. Now for the second broad category, knowledge and critical understanding. Knowledge is the body of information that are possessed by an individual, while understanding is the comprehension and appreciation of meaning. The term of critical understanding is used to emphasize the meaning in the context of democratic process and intercultural dialogue to involve active reflection and critical evaluation, which are being understood and interpreted. The various forms of knowledge and information, also the critical understanding, are important that are required for a culture of democracy fall into two main sets, which are knowledge and critical understanding of the individual self, and also the knowledge of critical understanding of the world or the environment, which are including politics, law, human rights, cultures, religion, history, media, economy, the environment, and sustainability. That is where my part comes in, which are the functional democracy overall in public environment standpoint. Now I'm gonna let DK Intan to give her conclusion on this presentation. Thank you.
To conclude, when we attempt to create alternative, better future, better pathway, to get there, it's not easy. We cannot start from scratch. The legacy of modernity include concept of justice, freedom and democracy, as well as government structure and economic system with which we must contend, as well as deeply embedded history of colonization, imperialism, social political injustice and environmental exploitation, as well as system inequality. Things may turn out differently, and things might turn out differently in the future. Embracing contingency also entails questions one another attitude. So, the recommendation is that democracy and education, which reflects pro-democratic stance. Democracy is about giving individual with the ability to make education, rational choices, and judgment that benefits the public good, not only increasing voting rights. We thought that democracy is more simple than a political system. It's also an ethical ideal that require active education participation by the people. Perhaps the precautions are with the link between the functional democracy and education is the most essential lesson as we go into the uncertain global information era. Because when I was 18, I don't know anything. So only 18 is better if we teach our youngsters about democracy, about politics, about right, wrong, how not to be judgmental through what you see on the media. It has never been more critical to assist young people in coping efficient with uncertainty, learning how to study for life, and understand that education is a moral endeavor aims at generating education citizen capable of making education decision. We must ask how we can account for the fact that the political decision of the small privileged group have negative consequences. That this protection affects those who are not. Not only this is involving in decision-making process and who do not participate in current problematic consumption pattern, such as many people living in the global today who are non-human or life form and future generation for Malaysia. In the light reconfiguring concept of political responsibility is that I see as an ongoing job of futuring functional of democracy. Thank you.